Hi everyone, it's Sam here. Once again, we're here. Survivor Wisconsin Season 11 is airing now. Can you believe it? I definitely can. And so I'm here now after the first and now second episodes to give you a bit of my thoughts as a viewer and a bit of my thoughts just analyzing how the players are playing the game, how they're being perceived on the game, and who the heck I think might be winning this whole thing. Now, originally, I meant to make episodes 1 and episodes 2 separate episodes. And then life happened last week, and I had, let me put it this way, very little time. Very little time to mock this up. And so I decided, you know what? We're going to combine episodes 1 and 2. Now, the way I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be going through what my thoughts were from episode 1. And then after all those thoughts are done, I'll then transition to episode 2. All my thoughts from episode 1 are going to be pretty much only episode 1. So nothing from episode 2 is going to impact what happens in episode 1. If you are here just to listen to my most recent thoughts, around halfway through the video, I will switch over to actually talking about episode 2. But I'm here to talk about both episodes 1 and 2. You know what? Let's just get started. And we're starting today with 18 contestants. 18 contestants, that is a lot of players left in the game. A lot of game left to be played. And a lot of different storylines yet to be really developed. And we're going to be going, generally speaking, in this order, unless there is a tribe going to tribal, for example, which then they would be last in the order. Which for this tribe, I mean, Une is going to be last. Before I get to anything else, you might be asking, what the hell is Edgic? So, here's how Edgic works. Edgic is a portmanteau of the words edit, and logic. And essentially what it is, it's a concept that tries to figure out who is winning a Survivor season based on how the show is edited. And it's measured through 3 main components. Now, for Survivor Wisconsin, it's a little bit different than the actual show because unlike the actual show where they have 39, or I guess now 26, which kind of sucks, but 26 days of footage to scramble through for an episode. And each episode is like an hour long for 3 days worth of content. Survivor Wisconsin is filmed in 1 day. And it's about, you basically hear everything. That's one of the things about Wisconsin is that you're going to basically see and hear everything that happens in a given episode. And so for Wisconsin Edgic, it's a little bit different. I play a little bit harder, faster with the rules of Edgic, which is why if you've seen Edgic before and you're like, wait, this isn't accurate, it's because I'm doing it a little bit differently. So we're going to start with the rating. This is generally speaking the type of personality, more so the level of personality we see in an episode. First off, INV, invisible, basically not there. You're just kind of in the background, nothing happens. You don't really have a confessional or anything, minimal content. I doubt we'll see an INV in a Wisconsin episode because, generally speaking, everyone has at least one confessional in an episode. But that is there just in case it happens. Next up, we have UTR, which is under the radar, where they kind of have a role in the story, and they kind of are just there in the episode, but they really are kept out of focus. Like, there really isn't much development happening for them, and not much is going to happen to them in that episode itself. Next, we have middle of the road MOR, which means that they do more, but they're still lacking in at full level of development. And what I'd say is imagine more so like a supporting character role in a specific episode where they aren't the one driving the story forward, but they are a part of that story. The big one, complex personality CP, is where they emerge as both well-rounded and developed as personality. And essentially, their choices are presented to the audience, and we are given insight. Which essentially boils down to they are essentially made the main characters of an episode, or the main character of a tribe, or the main character of just in general. And the sweet spot you want to be in for a winner is you want to be getting a lot of complex personality, because that makes you the main character. And generally speaking, the main character of a Survivor season tends to either win or the story is in spite of them. Finally, we have over the top. Over the tops are generally speaking where they're presented as oversimplified or one-dimensional. And generally speaking, these are people we love to love or love to hate, or just love to watch because they are crazy. Now, with over the top, because Wisconsin's a lot more grounded than actual Survivor because of the limited time frame, I tend to give out over the tops a little bit easier to more so like you might not be completely over the top, but if you're the only content you're really giving is very one note in a certain direction, I'm probably going to give you an over the top. Which leads to tone. Tone basically saying, hey, are you portrayed on screen in a more positive light or a more negative light? And so positive means that you're significantly portrayed in a positive, and others will likely speak about you in a very positive way. And that is the big thing for Wisconsin, is that if others are speaking about you good, you're likely getting a positive. Neutral means that the narrative really doesn't convey anything about the players, good or bad. There might be a few throwaway comments, be like, oh yeah, I like this person. Oh yeah, this person's, I don't know. But if there's really nothing there, you're going to end up with a neutral edit. Nothing really changes. Mixed is similar to neutral, but instead of it being kind of nothing, it's kind of both, where you're getting both positive and negative recognition enough to where they kind of cancel each other out. And then finally, negative, if you're significantly portrayed in a negative direction, maybe you do something stupid, maybe you do something that is seen as villainous, maybe you do something that might be like, oh, how dare you, in an episode. Or maybe you're talked about in some kind of negative manner. And more often than not, if your boot episode has something to do with something you did, generally speaking, it's going to be negative, because that is what caused you to get out. And so, yeah, that's tone. And then finally, visibility, probably the easiest one to determine. Okay, well, probably the easiest one to decipher. Determining it's very hard. But visibility is just basically how much screen time are you getting in an episode? How much dedicated time is there in the episode for you? And scale, it's 1 to 5. There is technically a 0, which generally goes along with the invisible. But I don't think we're ever going to see that. And so, let's get to the actual first episode. We're going to start off with the Kurokuru tribe, with their Edgic scores, and we'll go through each player one by one, and we'll give a little bit of thoughts on each of their games. So, let's get started. First up, we've got Andrew. Now, Andrew has a very, very positive premiere episode. Of course, the episode starts with tribe introductions, so there really isn't too much to gain from it, except there is a couple notes I do have, one of which is that Andrew, in front of everyone, during his introductions, like, hey, I run these Milwaukee events, I post my own thing. Hey, Bar, I recognize you. And now, that, to me, is a bit crazy. The fact that Andrew instantly in the episode is like, hey, Bar, I know you, in front of pretty much everyone. And I think the reaction came off a little bit better than I expected it to be in that kind of situation, where it might tip off players' heads to be like, oh no, they know each other, that might be bad. But I think more so just saying, hey, I recognize you from something, I think it's very cool. I think it comes off very well for Andrew, and I think everyone's pretty happy with it. And Andrew's big moment in this episode is the immunity challenge. Now, if you don't remember from the episode, I mean, you should remember, it's a very big part of it, is the digging portion of the immunity challenge, and how the other tribes took a year to do it. But Kurokuru didn't take a year, and you might be wondering, how the hell did they do that? Well, Andrew had a strategy. He saw a very specific pattern in the sand, a very flattened pattern, to point him in the right direction and be like, hey, someone probably sat here while hiding a thing. Dug it up, found the bag within 2 seconds, which I think is crazy. It's impressive. It's really well done, and it deserves an applause for that. Like way to go, Andrew. Good job there. And so a lot of the rest of this episode really is based around the fact that Andrew did so well in the challenge that people are starting to pick up on, like, hey, we really like this guy. We want to stick with this guy. We want to work with this guy really well. And we don't really have as much strategic talk into Andrew, or really most of the tribe here, because they're still in the kumbaya phase of Survivor, where they haven't had to go to tribal. So they are still very much in the group think like, oh, we're having so much fun, we're all friends, yay, phase of the game. And so for that reason, that's kind of why I've given Andrew an over-the-top positive, because he's, truth be told, put in a positive light, but really only because of the challenge and because everyone likes him. But we don't really hear some insight from him. So over-the-top positive 2 is where he ends up. Next, we're going to go to Bar. Now, out of everyone on this Kurokuru tribe, Bar gets by far the most content dedicated to him. I mean, if we look at everyone's scores, we can see that, I mean, hey, visibility-wise, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2. Bar has a 4. Bar is by far the one we see the most. First off, Bar gets the Matt question. Normally in Survivor, when people are analyzing the edit, the Matt questions at the very start of the game and the marooning matter a lot. For Wisconsin, I feel like they're more circumstantial, but I think it's cool to note that he got the Bar question, or the Matt question, and 2 other people in this episode who got Matt questions did have a lot of impact. So I think that was pretty cool. And so, yeah, Bar has a pretty fun intro, pretty normal. We don't really see much of note from Bar until after the challenge, where immediately after the challenge, Bar gives us the first confessional of the season, that kind of varies on both positive and negative feelings. Where he said going in the challenge, he's like, Brandon, he really wanted to do the puzzle. He said it. But he did really nothing to help. He really didn't help as much. He's like, Bar says something very specific where he's like, he has a loud bark and a small bite. And that first moment of real like strategy coming from this tribe is why Bar is put up in this high regard in this episode. We hear later in the episode when Bar has his confessional, he does an entire tribe breakdown for how he feels about everyone in the tribe. And we get to see through Bar's point of view how this tribe makeup is going. And I think through Bar's POV alone, it kind of does a really good job of like summarizing, hey, this is where everyone feels in the tribe, despite really no strategy being done. Where he's like, I feel good with Cynthia, I feel good with Sadie. New Andrew's going to be here, concerned, but I really like him. Wants to work with him. Brandon, I'm not sure about. And so with that, Bar gives us the most insight this episode from this tribe and the most content, which is also why I have him labeled as player of the episode for this tribe. And that's why he gives a character, which is why he gets complex personality mixed, though, because he does come off very villainous in some scenes, especially with the Brandon confessional. He comes off very villainous, but everyone likes him, so that's mixed. And right now, I'm not sure how to feel about Bar, but he does get a lot of content in this episode, and I think we'll see him for a while. Next, we're going to go to Brandon. Now, Brandon has a rough premiere. Brandon has his intro. His intro is pretty fun, where it's like, oh, guess my age, yeah. And that's pretty fun, but it doesn't really stand out as much in the whole thing, in the whole deal of the thing. And then we get to the challenge where Brandon's like, hey, guys, I can do a puzzle. I'm confident in my ability to do a puzzle. And then he really ends up not helping that much. And for Kurokuru, their struggles in the challenge, unlike the other two tribes where they're struggling in the sand, their struggles come from the logic puzzle, where they take around the same amount of time as the Wei tribe does to find the freaking bag, which, if I'm remembering, is around 30 minutes. So they struggled with the puzzle. And if the bags weren't hidden as deep as they were, or if they were easily found, I do think Kurokuru loses this first challenge and goes to tribal because of the puzzle. And so Brandon gets called out by Bar in his confessional being like, hey, dude, you really didn't do well in the puzzle after you said you think you would be good at it. And being unable to back it up, it comes off pretty bad. I do think Brandon does come off self-aware. He's like, look, I'm not happy about how I performed. I am still excited to win. I'm very happy we still won. And he gives his thoughts about who he wants to work with. But really, not many people are coming out and being like, hey, I really want to work with Brandon. The only person who I really heard say this was Cynthia, who's like, I like Brandon, I want to work with him. Which is why Brandon gets an under-the-radar -2 edit for this episode. Didn't want to give him over-the-top negative because that's more so reserved for very villainous things, and instead of foolish. I will say, after this episode, after that performance, I do feel like Brandon is the most in danger on this tribe to go home next. I think if this tribe goes to the tribal, we will likely see a Brandon boot. And sorry, Brandon. Next, we're going to go to Cynthia. Now, Cynthia starts the episode in the marooning with a very interesting story that kind of trails through the entire episode for this tribe, which is about Etsy witches, which, as someone who's used Etsy a lot, I've not heard of, and after Googling it, oh my god. Very funny, very interesting, comes off very, very likable. And so a lot of the kind of trend of this episode, like this, almost like a subplot for Kurokuru, is the idea of these Etsy witches. It'd be like, oh, we did a little prayer circle before the challenge, to try and get them to help us win. And then they did win. Wow, they probably buried the bags really deep. And so, with that idea in general, though, it does bring Cynthia up to a little bit of a more middle-of-the-road edit here. We do hear Cynthia talk about the challenge as well, being like, hey, I knew I'd be good at that challenge because of the sticks. I've done that before. Done. But finally, the last thing for Cynthia that really happens in this episode that really matters, it's also really nice because it's the last confessional we hear before switching tribes, is that she's sad with Green Lost because Zach is there and she knows Zach and she's worked with Zach in a previous show. And that really, I really hope Zach doesn't go home, is a nice transition into what we have with the Green Tribe later, which we'll get to. Gotta talk about Boy first, but we'll get to them. Next up, we got Nikki. Nikki, out of this entire tribe, really gets the least content really dedicated to her. She has a confessional where she's like, hey, I like to work like everyone. really want to work with Andrew. She has her confessional or intro where she's like, "Hi everybody, I'm like mom," all this kind of stuff. But other than that, Nikki doesn't really get much content, despite killing it on the puzzle. Like, she kills it. She does the one who takes the lead, and once Bar also helps in, they're basically going back and forth trying to figure it out. And so Nikki does a good job there. But really, other than that, we don't get too much from her. She is in a couple conversations, but otherwise, pretty under the radar. Under radar, too. Finally, we get Sadie. Sadie is very much a first game player. She's coming off being like, hey, it's my first game. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really having a good time. And she's coming off very positive to a lot of players. I think we heard from Bar, Andrew, and Cynthia being like, hey, I really like Sadie and I want to work with her. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which actually, I will correct myself later if I'm wrong. But Sadie comes off very nice, very positive. Sadie also comes off very quiet as a personality. And I think Sadie will end up, throughout the season, be a lot more of an under-the-radar player. Because I feel like Sadie comes off a lot more reserved, a lot more reserved, a little bit shy, a little bit just kind of a bit wallflowery at certain points. Granted, that might just be because this tribe really hasn't done much. But I feel like Sadie's going to be a very quiet player this season who is still going to be playing freaking hard. And so Sadie gets her first under radar of the season. I do think we'll see her get another under the radar. I might have given her under radar episode 2. I probably did. But we'll find out. So, to move on from this tribe, we're going to go to the Wei tribe. Or the Wai tribe. I don't know how they pronounce it in the show. It's 3 letters long and hard to pronounce. So, that's fun. Now, let's start with this tribe. First up, we have Alec. Now, Alec, despite this tribe having a lot of content where the other 2 tribes started the episode being like, hey, tribe introductions, we're on this stuff. This tribe is instantly like, hey, let's go idol hunt. And they split off instantly. First thing to note, that's crazy. From a game perspective, you guys are insane for doing that. For instead of just taking the time to connect and be like, oh, hey, how you doing, blah, 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 all this stuff, tribe kumbaya, tribe bonding, yeah, no, instant into the game. But for the tribe makeup of this tribe, it does make sense, which we will get to. But Alec really is probably the one player on this tribe who doesn't have much going on for him this episode. He's kind of hunting for the idol. He's looking for the idol. He knows Megan and Nolan. He's connecting with them. We don't really see Alec connect well really with anyone else, though, in the episode. Where there is a scene where he's with Patrick, but they really don't do anything other than idol hunt. And so, yeah. The only other thing we hear is that from him that he heard that John Sean said he was sketchy to Nolan. And so he's looking for that. And he also makes a comment being like, hey, Crystal and Patrick, they seem to be more socially aware than they're letting on. But that's all from his confessional. We really don't see Alec interact otherwise, which is why he's sitting here with an under radar too. Next, we're going to go to Crystal. Now, Crystal has a fun episode. Crystal starts by being recognized by Patrick, and I think she handles it very well, very chatty, and I feel like Crystal and Patrick, especially after that, are locked in, especially with them both talking about, hey, we both love Trinity on the other tribe. As for the rest of it, Crystal also immediately locks in with Megan, being like, hey, we are the only 2 girls in this tribe. We need to stick together. It is 4-on-2. And I think Crystal does a very good job this first episode making those initial bonds and making those initial connections. When coming into this, she really didn't have she doesn't have a connection on this tribe. Unlike 3 of them. I mean, she's also happy Patrick's got a puzzles because she is in it. And that comes off very likable in the confessional. And everyone's talking about Crystal, and they're like, oh, we all like Crystal. The only exception being Nolan, who's like, hey, I want Crystal gone because she is a lot more of a quiet and boring player. But because Megan likes her, I'm not going to immediately push for it. Other than that, Crystal comes off very positive this episode. Very middle of the road in terms of character growth because we are seeing her develop into these bonds. But otherwise, pretty good episode for Crystal to start. Next, we turn to John Sean. And oh boy. So John Sean does not have a great premiere episode. For what I would say. John Sean, he is chatting. He is having a couple good conversations. He has a good conversation with Nolan early on where they're like, hey, here's a little bit of introduction stuff. And they both agree, hey, we're locked in. And that was good for John Sean's game. However, other than that, once the idol hunt starts beginning, it kind of becomes pretty clear that once Crystal and Patrick are kind of grouping up and then Alec, Megan, and Nolan are together, John Sean is the guy on the outs. And And I think he's trying to form these bonds, trying to form these very quick bonds, but he's also spending a lot of time looking for the idol in the episode. Or if he is doing these bonds, we really don't see it as much. And that could spell disaster for his game. Another thing of note I want to mention is that later on, once the whole idol shenanigans happen, where Megan's talking to John Sean, where she's like, hey, Nolan might have found something to John Sean. John Sean immediately, in our conversation, once Crystal joins, or with Crystal, is like, hey, once Crystal joins, it's like, hey, Nolan might have found something, and Megan said something, all this stuff, and keeps spreading this information. And at this point in the game, when it is the very kumbaya stage, John Sean is already stepping into the idea of strategy and gameplay. But when I say that, I mean more so in a negative, we need to start focusing on these people to get them out. Where everyone else is kind of really, in these conversations, be like, oh yeah, I like everyone, you know. And that puts John Sean generally into speaking of a negative light, where he's coming off a little bit negative, a little bit sketchy to the other players in the game. And especially to Alec specifically, because John Sean said that Alec was sketchy to Nolan, who then told Alec. And Alec now is like, oh, I don't know if I can trust John Sean. And so John Sean, despite like feeling good with Tribe, trying to be low-key and trying to connect, still kind of comes off as sketchy to a lot of players. And I do think that if in episode 2, he will go home. Avoiding spoilers for now. But I do think that he is the most in danger of going home if this tribe goes to tribal. Which, I mean, sucks. But it sucks to see happen. But it's just, I do think John Sean is in a bad spot. Less to his own fault. More so just to being, this is the tribe he ended up on. Next up, we got Megan. Megan has a pretty solid premiere episode. I think Megan probably gets the most connections from this tribe going into it, where she's connected with Alec and Nolan. She immediately connects to Crystal, and she connects well with Patrick. And even still, she connects well with John Sean in a conversation with him, where she's telling him, hey, Nolan might have found something. And so, all in all, Megan has a very good episode. We get a lot of insight to her thoughts. She does very well in the challenge. She says this already as well, where she's like, hey, I've done this kind of puzzle a lot, so I've nailed it. And Megan's big turning point in this episode is, and this tribe's main plot of this episode does revolve around the idol and the idol hunt. And Megan does fill that very strong secondary character role in the idol hunt, where once the idol is found by Nolan, Megan is the one who catches him in the act and sees, hey, he's got the idol. And so then a lot of the rest of the episode, we see it go from Megan's point of view, where she thinks she sees Nolan find something. She's talking to everyone else about, hey, she might have found something. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. And in her confessional, she's like, I think I saw Nolan find something. I want to know from him, at least, if he's going to tell me so I can feel good with him. Which we'll then get to in the next episode. So, yeah, very, very character progression, very complex personality, very CPM3 episode for Megan. Next up, we have my personal pick for player of the episode from this tribe, Nolan. Nolan gets a CPP5, which is a very, very, very good edit to get, especially in a premiere. First off, elephant in the room, he finds the idol. That was a very impressive idol find. He turned it off in a way that kind of seemed to be very nonchalant. I'll be honest, he grabs the idol, he stuffs it in his pants, looks like he's peeing or something. I don't think he's peeing there. I'd be surprised if anyone else thought he was peeing there. The only person who really spots him with the idol is Megan, which then leads to the rest of the episode. But Nolan plays it off very well. Nolan, by the end of this episode, I feel like has really good connections with everyone in the tribe except Crystal. And he locks in an alliance with Patrick pretty early on, in a conversation with Patrick, which I think does very well for him. Everyone's very happy about Nolan. Everyone's very positive about him. No one has anything bad to say about him, except with the conversations where people are like, oh, does he have the idol? But even in those conversations, it doesn't come off as people are like upset that he might have it. It's more like oh, does he have it? Oh, okay, that's fine. That's cool. And so Nolan has a very strong grasp on this tribe, and he has a very strong position on this tribe. And I think that's going to suit him very well. He has the most content on this tribe. He also does get the map question for his tribe. And with that, Nolan's in a good spot. So, yeah. Finally, we're going to get to Patrick. Patrick has a little bit quieter of an episode character-wise, but he still has a pretty big episode. Patrick does very well in the challenge. He's the one who actually is able to find the bag in the sand after all 6 players were introduced because he was supposed to be doing the puzzle. Another thing from him, connects instantly with Crystal. It's a very good connection with Crystal instantly in the game, and is very proud of himself to be a puzzle solver and a bit of a hero. And that's how he comes off in the episode. He is a middling character. He is a bit of a hero in the challenge, and he's very well suited. He also connects well with Nolan instantly, connects well with Crystal, of course, like I said, and generally speaking, is generally pretty liked. I also do think he is the one who starts the auto hunt, which kicks off the episode for them. So MOR positive 4. So that's the way try for this episode. Most in danger, Jean-Sean. Player of the episode, Nolan. Now, as I get my notes together for the next tribe, now we have the tribe who's lost the challenge, who is in danger this time. The Une tribe. Oh boy, this is going to be a fun one. So, we're going to start with Corn Dog here. Corn Dog immediately starts the episode for them. I mean, other than like the... Corn Dog started the episode, they have their normal chat before the challenge where they go like, oh, this is all my names, blah, blah, blah. From that, one of my notes I took from it specifically is that I feel like Corn Dog out of everyone in that group came off the most likable and the most like wanting to work with him. So I think Corn Dog immediately starts this game in probably the best social position of anyone here. And so, yeah. But post-immunity challenge, immediately when he gets back, he brings Deets, Trinity, Rachel's like, hey, I want to do this GG alliance. And they all instantly agree. And so this alliance of 4 starts to form instantly. And from that moment on, for the rest of the episode, it's between Sid and Zach going home. Now Trinity's name is thrown out there as well, but I don't think it ever would have been Trinity in this case. I think those 4 locked in, and after that happened, that was that. One of those 4 were safe. One is Sid or Zach going home. And that speaks to Corn Dog's game to instantly come over and be like, hey, I want to lock this in. So it sucks to lose for him, obviously. And the plan, of course, is to go with that. And so, but other than that, with Corn Dog, there really isn't too much else we get with him, except that Corn Dog and Rachel in a separate conversation are like, hey, I really like you. I like you. Let's lock in. I trust you the most in the game. And they almost for this pseudo final 2 that really gets solidified in the second episode for me. And so, yeah. So Corn Dog, after making that alliance, really kind of sits in the backseat. And by the time the vote comes around, he seems to be in the driver's seat, though, for who's going home between Sid and Zach. And so with that, he's chilling. And he gets middle of the road positive 4 because he isn't the main focus of the episode for this tribe, but he does have a lot of content for it. Next up, we're going to get to Deets. And for my opinion, for this episode, Deets is the player of the episode. I do think that once that foursome is aligned is between Sid and Zach, and I do think the biggest proponent of why Zach is going home and the biggest person pushing that way was Deets from the edit. Because what we see is initially the 4 of them kind of agree, oh, let's take out Sid. But Deets likes Sid. Deets likes Sid, does not want Sid to go home. And so Deets starts putting in the work to try and make sure that Sid is not going to go home. I mean, we see from her conversation with Rachel where she's like, look, I like Sid. I'd rather Zach go home. And Trinity is very gung-ho on Sid because Zach had told Trinity earlier, hey, I like you. I like your vibe. Now, what happens then is Deets and Trinity have what I feel like is the quintessential moment of this episode for this tribe where Trinity and Deets are starting to talk. Trinity's like, hey, look, the vote is Sid, all this kind of stuff. And Deets is like, well, Zach threw out your name, Trinity. Zach threw out your name. It was like a possibility to go home. To Trinity. Trinity instantly flips the switch. Instantly is like, okay, you know what? Screw that. I want Zach gone. And I think Deets' work in this episode is the primary reason why Zach ends up being the target here, instead of it being Sid. I think if left to Corn Dog, Trinity, and Rachel, the vote would have been Sid. But Deets' work in this episode pushes Zach to go home, which is why I have her as my player of the episode on this tribe. Granted, Zach's also a lot to blame for why he goes home here too, but we'll get to that later. Next, we're going to go with Rachel. Now, Rachel has a very fun episode here, a very interesting episode too. Rachel kind of comes off as like the strategic head of this tribe. The person who's playing a lot more strategically, a lot more quietly strategic, but a lot very strategic for this tribe. Rachel does get the mad question, which is a thumbs up for her. And something we see from her is that she's kind of laying low, letting other people make the decisions here at the start. But by the end of the episode, she's the one who's deciding who goes home. She has the autonomy here. And so she's kind of like talking around, trying to form bonds. Forms a really tight one with Corn Dog, which is a very big moment in the episode. And is making alliances. But she has a confessional. She has a very interesting quote here, which is that, look, everyone's making alliances with everyone. Everyone's good with everyone, but everyone's good with no one. And so she needs to be like, look, I need to get a name. And I need to solidify something after this vote that will push me further. and it's truth and jest. Everyone's going up there and being like, oh yeah, we're good. Not everything's true though. And they got to find out after the vote, because before the vote, you can really only go off word. In Survivor, words can just come out of your mouth like willy-nilly. And so Rachel does a very good job of distinguishing that from the game and putting herself on the right side of the vote. And even going up into the vote on the episode, we never see them talk about voting Zach. And the impression going into the vote is it's probably still Sid going home, despite the work Dietz did. But after the vote out, we hear Rachel's voting confessional first. And in that voting confessional, she explains the exact reason why Zach is the one going home. She's like, look, Zach threw out too many names. He threw out Corn Dog's name, and that is not good with me, which is why Zach is sitting there instead of Sid. And I think that's a very interesting conversation coming from Rachel. I think that puts Rachel from a little bit of a radar to a middle of the road level, because before that she really was under the radar, but that level of strategic insight gives her a boost to being a more supportive character in this vote, which is why she's MOR4. Next up, we've got Sid. Now, Sid is a quiet player. Sid, generally speaking, from the one time I've met him as well, is a bit quiet. He is a bit composed, but he's very cerebral. He's thinking through a lot of different things at once, and he's going to play quiet. And he does the same thing here. Now, as soon as the target is between him and Zach, the best thing Sid could do for his game is be cool, keep calm, and let the vote switch to Zach. Because, truth be told, Sid, there is really nothing Sid can do other than beg, or other than start working the other four, that would keep him here over Zach. And I do think Sid does a really, really good job of it in this episode by laying low, letting people come to him with ideas, letting Zach bury his own game instead of him letting players with sway like Dietz or Rachel or Corn Dog, who were originally going to vote for Sid, shift the target over to Zach. Now, Sid does have a pretty wild scene in this episode that happens where Trinity comes up to Sid and is like, hey, Sid, you're on the bottom. And Sid is flustered. He is visibly flustered. He's like, what the hell's going on? Like, why am I on the bottom? But he handles it very well. With Trinity, there really isn't any reaction. It's more so the aftermath with Dietz, where they're talking like, look, I don't want to be targeted. I don't want to be this. And he handles it very well to the point where I think, especially in Dietz's mind, Dietz's like, oh, shit. We need to make sure that Sid's not going here because I would feel awful for him going home. And so, yeah. But yeah, overall, Sid has not the best premiere episode, but the best with what he could work with. I think Sid was put in a pretty bad spot with these four connecting instantly to where he's now on the bottom. And I do think if this tribe goes to tribal again, he is the most in danger of going home just by duty of also being on the wrong side of the vote. And so I do think Sid is in danger, but I think he does the best he can with what he's given. And it's a pretty solid episode for him. Middle of the road 3, though. He is quiet. And we do see a little less of him. But that's on purpose. Oh boy, next up we got Trinity. Now, Trinity has a very chaotic first episode in both positive and negative lights. Trinity, first off, in the tribe instructions, one of my big notes is Trinity is talking a lot. And even outside of her, she is like the first to respond to a lot of different questions and a lot of different things people are saying. And she is putting herself in the big vocal personality of the group. And I think people are picking up on that. And so then, come post-immunity, Trinity has this whole thing of where she's like, I was first boot. The last time I did something like this, I really don't want to be first boot again. And Trinity starts playing hard. She is playing very hard because she does not want to go in first, which I fully understand. If you were previously put in that situation where you were the first one gone, you want to do everything you can to avoid that so you can actually play the game this time. And here's the thing. I think Trinity goes a bit overboard with this. But that's Trinity. I can't really say much else except that's how Trinity is anyways. To where she is going wild. She's saying stuff to everyone. She's talking to everyone. She's begging people like, please don't vote me out. I want to stay here. I want to do all this stuff. And she's saying a lot of stuff where she probably shouldn't be saying stuff. One of the things I think Trinity trips up in this episode is telling Sid to his face, hey, you're on the bottom. Which I think is not great. I think Trinity also being the first one to kind of push a name in Sid initially was good because it got the ball rolling. But I think she really like tunnel vision onto that Sid idea until Deets then got into her head and was like, Zach. And then she tunnel visioned onto Zach's idea. And so I think something that really summarizes how Trinity's episode is that at Tribal Council, Devin asked Trinity a question. It's like, what will you do to avoid being the first boot of this game? Or something along those lines. And Trinity's response to the camera is everything. And I think she does everything here. She comes off a bit erratic, a bit crazy, a bit loud, very messy in this episode. They're trying to figure out what the fuck's going on with Trinity. And there's a lot with Trinity. But she saves herself from going home here. Her overplay does, in fact, work. I don't know whether or not she needed to overplay it to stay here, but I understand her mindset of, like, I need to play hard because I need to stay here. And with that, she does stay. She is over the top as hell, very one note, very one vote, like, scattery, erratic, running around like a chicken with her head cut off, very playing hard, which is why she gets an over-the-top M4. Oh boy, Trinity, look, the player of the episode's there. Entertainment of the episode is by far Trinity. Because holy shit. Oh my god. Like a train wreck, but the train isn't wrecking, if that makes any sense. So it's more just like a train chugging down the tracks 100 miles per hour. Like, oh boy. It's like I don't know why this is what's coming to mind. It's like freaking Rice Krispies. Like, Trinity's game is like Rice Krispies, and the fact that she's exploding immediately, and then probably will mellow out. But I don't know. That's the metaphor that came to my head. Finally, we have Zach. Zach, who is the first boot from the season. He is pissed to lose the first challenge. And, a lot of this episode is Zach kind of being unaware that there is that 4-person alliance. And Zach starts to push a lot of names. And I do think in Survivor, there's generally 2 kinds of first boots. There's the first boots that are really just, to no fault of their own, they just really didn't vibe with the tribe they were in, and they really couldn't do much to get out of their position. I think Joey is like someone who falls into that kind of reign. And then there are the first boots who really are like, who push really hard, who play extremely hard, and end up putting themselves in the spot where they go home. And I think Zach kind of applies to both of these spots here. I think for this tribe, no matter what happened, just based on the tribe makeup, Sid or Zach would have been the first to go home, just based on who was connecting immediately. But I think Zach really didn't do himself any favors in this tribe and kind of sort of overplayed to the point where he ended up being the target instead of Sid. And so I think Zach's biggest mistakes in this episode are being the one to push, hey, let's vote Trinity. Hey, I don't mind voting Corndog. I think the moment Zach says, I don't mind voting Corndog out, is the moment he goes home. Because I think without that, Rachel and Corndog might have still been convinced on the side of, hey, let's just vote out Sid. But once one of their names got thrown out, it was over for Zach. Zach was going to get the boot. And, Zach says a lot of names. Zach throws a lot of things out. Zach lies a lot, too. And something I want to note for this tribe is that during their tribe talk, there is really a lot of truth being said and a lot of lies being said. Deets and Rachel both say the truth about what their LRG past is, while it's Trinity, and more so Zach than Trinity, but Trinity and Zach both lie about their LRG past. And something that kind of comes to mind for me as well is, generally speaking, when you are lying to someone in a game like Survivor, whether you pick up on the fact that it's a lie or not, subconsciously there's always some kind of feeling of distrust. And I don't know how else to explain that, because truth be told, it's jargon. Like, it's just out there. It's like when someone tells you the truth, generally speaking, even subconsciously, there is a vibe of I like this person, I trust this person more. And I think realistically, that's what puts Dietz and Rachel in good spots to start, and Trinity and Zach in pretty bad spots to start. And I think Zach kind of puts himself in a bad spot immediately by lying about both where he's from and his allergy past. I don't know. That might just be me going a little bit crazy, but I think those kind of put him off on the wrong foot, and he wasn't really able to recover. So, quickly to go over each of these tribes' relationships. Right now, for Kurukuru, no alliances are formed. Everyone seems to be connected well. I think Andrew, Bar, Sadie, and Cynthia are securely in the center, with Nikki being the fifth there, really only connecting with Andrew. But Brandon is clearly much on the outs on this tribe. He is currently the least connected, and everyone's like, oh, I want to work with Andrew, Bar, Sadie, and Cynthia. Other than that, though, really not well. But I do worry for Nikki as well, because it doesn't appear like Nikki is well connected either. For Wei, we do have the first named alliance formed in Matt's staff between Patrick and Nolan. And right now, it seems like Megan is securely in the center of this tribe. Now, if I were to remake this graph after what I've just said right now, I probably would have put a line from John Sean to Nolan as well, just like connections. But generally speaking, it feels like there is this five-some group and then John Sean. So I feel like John Sean is on the outs on this tribe. And then finally, for Une Une, we have the GG alliance. And from what I gather in this episode, it seemed like Dietz and Sid are close and are closer. We'll see in the next episode, things do change. And Sid was with Zach, but otherwise, it is a GG game. Rachel and Corndog connected, Trinity and Corndog connected, Trinity and Dietz connected. A lot of connections within GG. Really only Sid and Dietz are outside. I do think Sid's in trouble. So now, let's get to some contender rankings. I'm going to be putting everyone in this cast so far who are still in the game. Sorry, Zach. In a ranking of how I feel like they are winning-wise or in danger. And so I'll be going through what each of these mean, but we're going to start from the bottom and in danger and work our way up to winner contention. And the way, for me, the absolute rankings is going to go left to right. So more left you are means the more likelihood, in my opinion, that you are higher up in that tier towards winner. So let's start with in danger. I'd like to mention, I made these before episode 2. This was before episode 2. For those who are watching this after seeing episode 2. But, I mean, look, Brandon and John Sean right now are clearly the targets on their tribes if they lose. I don't think there is another target. I think more so for Brandon, there is another target, and Nikki maybe. But I think if either of those two tribes lost and went to tribal, they would be the boots. And I don't think that has changed since the remainder of the episode. And I do think that if one of these tribes go to tribal next, they will be the person going home. And I will say, a little bit to follow their own, somewhat, I think they just kind of got screwed by tribe makeup, which happens in Survivor. I think Brandon just doesn't vibe well with a lot of the personalities on his tribe. I think John Sean kind of got screwed with a little bit of who he's with, and the fact that there's already 3 connected people, and then there's Crystal and John, and then there's 2 people up in age who've already connected. I think John Sean just got put in a really bad spot. Now, for players who I'm really unsure about their future in the game, and this kind of boils down to 2 different things. For Sid and Trinity, I am unsure on who's going to be the next person going home from this tribe. And I'm unsure about their longevity in the game. I think Sid is just really in a bad spot based on numbers, and I think he could just get taken out pretty simply here. And I think Trinity is playing very, very loud and erratic, and I don't know how long that loud and erratic personality is going to get Trinity in this game. I do think if she keeps being as big of a player as she is, she will get targeted and will likely go home. And I do think that, let me clarify, I do think anyone, even those who are in danger, can improve their position in the game, but I think right now, I'm not sure about their future. And then as for Alec and Nikki, we really don't hear as much from them in terms of social and strategic play, which is why I'm here, because I'm really unsure of where do they fit on this cast, and I don't know yet. And we'll learn more later. Now we're going to go some middle of the pack players who've gotten some content, gotten some positives, gotten some negatives. Actually, no, these all got positives. What am I talking about? But they're all pretty solid players. They're playing well, but they really haven't had anything go for them, right or wrong yet. Patrick, Andrew, Sadie, and Crystal. Patrick and Andrew both had good challenge performances. Sadie and Crystal are just generally liked, but it really is hard to tell early on. I do want to say one other thing, though, about Andrew, which is that this is my wild prediction for the season. We see Andrew is very loose with, information that he says, and his inexperience in playing I think Andrew at some point will say something, will have something specifically he said be the reason why he is voted out. I think Andrew is going to screw himself over at some point in the season. Now, I could be fully wrong. He could just be taken out as a threat or something. But I think Andrew is going to flame out. I think he's going to flame out. Next up, we have those who are pretty close to winner connection, but I need a little bit more from them. For Cynthia, we're going to start with Corndog and Rachel, actually. For Corndog and Rachel, I think both of them are pretty clear-cut and tight. But I have a hard time differentiating between the two of them who is really like in that winner contention tier. I think both of them are very close, but because both of them are very close and both are very close connected to each other, it's hard for me to delineate who from those two is more likely to be a winner in this kind of case. I think both are very close to getting to that level, though. And as for Cynthia, I can't describe this as anything else but an internal gut instinct that Cynthia is a strong-ass player. And based on how she's acting around camp, I do think Cynthia has the tenacity and the know-how of how to win a Survivor game. The thing is, we haven't seen it yet. There really hasn't been much content, which is why she's here. I need more. I just need a little bit more to be confident. And then finally, we're going to get to our winner contenders. We're going to go right to left this time just because, bottom up. First up, we have Megan. Megan does a really good job connecting this episode, and she does put herself in a very good spot just immediately starting. And I think she's put herself in a spot where she's arguably in the best position on her tribe. And I think that bodes well for her. She is a little bit quieter, though, which is why I have her on the bottom end of this winner contention, but still winner contention. Bar is next for me. Bar is really the main character of his tribe at this point. There really isn't another character or another player on his tribe that kind of fills that like narrator vibe as much as Bar has. And I do think Bar is in a good spot. However, my thing with Bar is I do have him in winner contention, but I can see a very possible trajectory where Bar keeps going and going. And with Bar being a little bit more complex in his negativity as well, I could see Bar ending up as a final tribal council loser. That is my immediate thought with watching Bar. I know in my intro, I compared him to Nolan. He reminds me so much of how Nolan was in Confessionals during Calm vs. Chaos as well. I do see Bar ending up in a spot where, similar to Nolan, where he ends up in the end, he comes off likable, but he does not have the respect of the jury. I don't know. Bar can turn this around. I do think Bar and Nolan are very different players. I do think he's a very different player. He's a very distinct player for what he is. But my instinct with Bar is that he is either going to be taken out late in the merge, or he's going to end up at Final Tribal Council and up in second or third place. He could win, though. He does have the know-how to win. He does have the chops to win, though. Until I see more of that, though, he's in third. Next up, we have Deets. I think Deets had the best episode for the Une Une tribe, and I do think she is the West connected at this point, just because she has Trandy close. At least this is what I believed following episode 1, where she has Trandy pretty close, and then she also is the only real lifeline for Sid. I think she had a really good first episode, and I think that could build and compound, and she could be going further in the game. And finally, for my top winner contender, it's Nolan. Nolan came into this game saying, look, I'm going to play a strong game from the outset, and boy howdy has he done that. I think Nolan finding that idol and no one really being upset about him. Granted, Megan was the only one who kind of saw it, and she's not upset. She's more like, I want to know more. I think Nolan being that center of a tribe where he's already connected well with everyone to the point where he is a strong player in control, I think that bodes very well for his game. I can see him winning at this point already. So that's all my thoughts for episode 1. Now, we're going to get to episode 2. We're 50 minutes into this video. I'm going to grab a quick water. In the meantime, guys, in the live stream, if this premiere, or in the comments, who do you guys think after the first episode is your contenders to win? Give me 2 seconds. And yes, I am aware that I could have cut this out. I just thought it was kind of funny. Okay. Episode 2. This was a fun episode. a little bit less content than episode 1, which is like a thank God. So I can talk a little bit less about it because the premiere is always going to have a lot of information going into it. But this was another fun episode, a good follow-up to episode 1. We're going to start with Kurukuru this time. No, once again, we're going to start with the Kurukuru tribe. So, for Kurukuru, we're going to start with Andrew. Now, generally speaking, for this Kurukuru tribe, they have spent all their time together. Literally, all of their time has been spent together. And they're also still in the Kumbaya phase. So we really haven't gotten anything from them in terms of strategy, which is why so many players this episode end up very under the radar. Because there really hasn't much that happens. But we're going to start with Andrew. Andrew doesn't have much happen. He does well in the challenge. And by well, I mean he loses the first time. But, it's fine. He does as well as he can in the challenge. He plays it off. He doesn't do as well, but people don't really care as much. But he comes to his confessional. And he has the freaking idol. What? What? He just shows up. He's like, I found the idol. And it wasn't caught on camera, which I think kind of sucks. But even still, wow. Andrew finds the idol. That was crazy. It's funny because he finds it kind of in front of Brandon, but Brandon doesn't really pick up on it. And we see in Brandon's confessional where he's talking, he's like, yeah, no, I feel good with Andrew. We had a really good discussion around the rocks. And Andrew, 5 minutes later in his confessional, was like, yeah, I found it in the rocks. And Brandon came up to me to start talking to me. And I'm like, oh, no. And he needs to hide it. Which, wow. But even still, holy crap. What a moment for Andrew. Andrew's still being seen positively by everyone. Everyone's still like, hey, I want to work with Andrew. And he finds the idol. That's a middle-of-the-road positive edit if I've ever seen one. And he gets a 2 for this episode. But he is, in my opinion, the player of the episode for this tribe. For just finding that idol alone. Holy hell. Next up, we go to Bar, who is still the strategic lead of this tribe. But really, truth be told, there isn't too much going on. So he still ends up middle of the road for this tribe. He's second challenge win, second win. He's a small guy. He's like, I'm small. Seeing someone bigger like Zach go home, I feel good about that. And he's kind of starting to settle into a moment here where he kind of narrates what he did in the challenge, where he had a very good... I very much enjoyed Bar's strategy of using a different language to remember it because no one else here would speak it, which I think is very well done, very smart, very strategic chops for Bar. And he ends up having a chance at the hero moment twice, and after the second one, he's like, get me out of here. No, I'm done. And yeah. Something else with Bar is he's like, I'm holding in my maturity to say, hey, let's go idol hunting. I really want to go idol hunting. Because he's like, I want to find it. And I think that especially for Bar, where he's like, I know I want to do this, but I know I can't say it, gives me a lot better feeling than I did the first episode on how I feel Bar is playing. With Bar having that level of restraint, I think is very good for his game. It's also funny how he predicts that he thinks Brandon will say it. And you know what? Me looking at this tribe, yeah, Brandon would be the one to say it. It might not be, though. Andrew might say something, but he already has it, so who cares? But yeah, otherwise, not much else for Bar. Middle of the road 3. Brandon, very, very quiet episode. Good to win twice. He's like, no need to... it's good for us to win. We don't need to talk voting. We have the majority. Blah, blah, blah. And then just kind of chatting with everyone. So really not much for Brandon. Good recovery episode. I do still think he's the most in danger, though, because his position really hasn't changed. It's more just kind of been more of the same. And we don't have much strategic content from this tribe anyways. And so, yeah. Next we go to Cynthia, who gets the most content in this episode. But it's more so in spite of the tribe than anything. Because we start the episode with Cynthia being like, I am pissed that Zach is the first boot. Because they knew each other before. She's really upset she's gone. And she's sad to see him go. And that is the payoff from last episode where she's like, I really hope he doesn't go home. Good payoff. But good moment for Cynthia as well. She ends up being the one to win the challenge for her tribe. Being the one who get that last point. She does it. And she has a good conversation with the rest of the tribe. Didn't really want to go again, but she did anyways. And used a last minute strategy from Andrew. And so Andrew, despite not performing well in the challenge, like he says, still has help in the challenge by giving her a strategy to win. And so, yeah. And so she's liking everyone. But otherwise, not really much else happening. Cynthia does have that middle of the road because of the Zach vote out storyline. But she's a 4 because she's the most seen on screen. So, good episode for Cynthia. Now for Nikki. Winning, yeah, that's great. And she's worried about being cocky, though. And that was something that kind of came off a little bit interesting in the confessional. Where she's like, I'm worried about our tribe being too cocky and the fact we might lose. Which, granted, is a good stance to happen. I don't think it's a bad thing right now to be in that Kumbaya stage, though. But she is right that they need to start, like, actually strategizing and wanting to scramble, because then you start building actual true bonds. I do think that this tribe has a solid chance of staying together and working together in a swap. But I could also see people being easily swayed the other way because they really haven't connected. All they've done is sit around and talk, but they haven't had a vote. Otherwise, that's pretty much it we get from Nikki. Under the Radar 1. Finally with Sadie. Sadie has really one real moment in this challenge where she's talking about how before the challenge, Bar told her, like, hey, I feel good about you. And she's like, I feel so good about that. I was so worried about being first boot that hearing other people being like, hey, I really want to work with me really makes me feel good. And it makes me almost kind of excited for a trial because I don't think I'll be going home. Which, granted, being excited for a tribal, not great. But I think it more so just be the fact that this tribe has done nothing. They have kind of just stood around in Kumbaya land. And I think people are starting to get to the point where they're like, hey, I'm here to play Survivor. I want to play Survivor. So, truth be told, even if this tribe wins again, I think people are going to start splitting off. I cannot see this Kumbaya stage happening 3 episodes in a row. But yeah, Under the Radar 1 for Sadie. Pretty under the radar episode for this tribe as a whole. Next, we're going to get to Une Une. Une Une had to deal with the aftermath of the vote. We immediately hear from Trady, which I think was pretty funny. But, yeah. First episode, we're going to start the player of the episode this time, Corndog. Now, last episode, I had said that there really needed to be some kind of delineation between Corndog and Rachel for what their games were, and I think Corndog really does it here. Corndog, first off, he finds the damn idol. Holy shit. He finds the idol. He finds it in a tree. He's 5'4". He like, puts his arm around trying to grab it like a freaking, like a claw machine, but he gets it. He gets it, but he gets it in front of Dietz. And, you know, I think, truth be told, I think that looks better for Dietz than it does for Corndog, because Corndog, I feel like, has control over this tribe. We see more in this episode where Corndog's like, I'm locked in with Rachel. And we have players like Sid being like, if I want to stay in this game, ideally I want to work with Corndog and Rachel because I know they're super close. And so, Corndog is feeling really good. And that is truly told where he's at. And Corndog is kind of the point of view character for this Une Une tribe this episode, where he's like, hey, I'm good. The alliance is all really good. Like, Sid is looking very stressed out, but like Zach was throwing my name out, so I mean it's good for Zach to go home. And his own really thought process and more insight to see what we could see in the future is that he thinks Dietz is very well connected and is worried about Dietz. And so right now, with how the other players are feeling, where Trinity also is like, I really like Corndog, and like he is my number one person I like to work with. I think Corndog is securely in that number one spot on this tribe. Whereas I thought it was more so Dietz coming out of episode 1, but it's actually Corndog who is the one in control of this tribe. And he's got an idol. So, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. Next up, we have Dietz. Dietz kind of has a cool-off episode after the first one. And Dietz, really middle of the road here, because she sees Corndog find the idol. Now, if Corndog would have grabbed it in his initial put-through, no one would have seen him have it. But Dietz is standing right next to him when he has it. And for me, at least, I think that bodes very well for Dietz. The fact that Dietz saw Corndog have it. Because if Dietz is not going to tell anyone, and Dietz is going to be trusting the Corndog enough to where, like, hey, I'm not going to tell anyone you have the idol. I want to work with you. That might change Corndog's tone to more so being like, oh, Dietz is very well connected. Be like, I need to keep Dietz here because she is loyal to me. And so, yeah. So Sid then comes to Deets to be like, hey, I want Trinity on if there's another vote. She doesn't like it. Sid is doing too much right now to her eyes. And he needs to realize that she feels very close to Trinity, although Trinity doesn't feel as close to Deets as Deets thinks. And so Deets kind of has a little bit of a middling episode. Not really much happening other than her conversation with Corndog about the idol. And I do worry for Deets now a little bit more. I do think that Deets has fallen from first on the totem pole for me, like in the top, to like third now. But still, decent episode, middle of the road 3. Now we have Rachel. Rachel really doesn't have much happen for her this episode. She has her confessional, but that's about it. There is a lot of positive talk about her, though. Trinity and Corndog, and I think Deets, or no, Trinity and Corndog both all are talking and being like, we all like Rachel a lot. And Rachel's my number 1. And Trey's like, no, Rachel's my number 2. You know, and Rachel gets a lot of positive content. Where after her council, she's like, trial was good. Votes land where I thought. All right, what's next? It's hard because she wants Sid, but they'd have a good convo. But even still, they're unsure about what's going on. But Rachel really doesn't have much content. Middle of the road, positive 1, just because of her connection with Corndog, too. X for Sid. Sid's very under the radar this episode. He really isn't on screen that much, but we hear a lot more about him than we do see him talk. Where Sid is in the dumps. He's down in the dumps. He knows he's in danger because he was the only person on the other side of the boat. He's like, I want to make sure I'm not the one going home next. He likes to think he brings a lot challenge-wise, which I think is true. I think he does bring a lot challenge-wise. I think he's just happy to be here. But there's starting to be rumblings, both positive and negative, to where Sid might be cut because he's doing too much in the game, but we like Sid, so we don't know what's going on. But, yeah, he knows he at the bottom. He's not sure what he did wrong, which, truth be told, he says, I'm not sure what I did wrong. Sid, I'm going to tell you right now, you did nothing wrong. Truth be told, you didn't do anything wrong. You got caught in a situation that, you just got caught in a really bad situation. You got dealt a bad hand. And so, he's on the bottom, but he's not out of it. He's going to fight. He's optimistic, and he's aware. He's socially aware, too, where he's like, hey, Corndog and Rachel would be an ideal alliance here. Because they are tight, and he knows he can work his way into it, which I think is smart for Sid. I do think he's the most in danger, though, if they go again. I could see now more than last time I could see, or going into the episode, I thought Sid was pretty cooked. I still think he's cooked, but I think he's less cooked than going in. Then finally, Trinity. Trinity has a very solid episode. Starts the episode where she's like, I'm happy to be here. I'm not the first boot. Zach already deserved. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, Trinity. But Trinity does have a pretty good cool-off episode where she's really not... She is doing what I hoped what she would do, which is after that first episode where she was very, very over the top, she's calmed down her game to the point where she's like, you know, I'm going to smooth it over. I'm going to be here. I'm going to just calm it down, and I'm going to keep playing my game. And she does. She's felt bad about not participating. And and something interesting for Trinity as well, storyline-wise, that we get from her, is that she is under the mindset of like, hey, I want people to think I'm dumb and an airhead. And I want people to think that I'm just kind of vibing here. And I'm just kind of like, oh, I'm Trinity, like all that stuff. And I think it's working well, because I do think that a lot of people have that opinion of her right now. But they like her, and that's what's good. And that's why she's a middle row positive 4 here. I mean, we see Corna be like, I love Trinity. And, like, I don't want her to go home. But, yeah. Overall, this tribe content is mainly focused on the aftermath of the vote. I do think Corndog plays it very well with his idol find as well. And then Sid's still the most in danger. So, yeah. Finally, let's get to the Y tribe. The Y tribe, oh boy. This was an interesting segment. This Y tribe segment was very much dominated by the vote, of course. And the moment the vote kind of started, where they started talking about it, it became very clear when it was the 4 of Crystal, Nolan, Megan, Patrick, that they were going to talk. It became pretty clear that John Sean was going to be the target from them. They didn't say a name yet, but then once Nolan, Alec, and Patrick started talking, they're like, John Sean's a name. That's kind of in the narrative. Is that this episode, John Sean is the target. Is there anything that's going to sway it a different way? So, let's just start talking about the players a bit. First up, we got Alec. Alec has a pretty middle of the road episode here, unlike last time, because he's pretty involved with how John Sean's boot ends up being, where he's like a proponent of it because, well, look, one of the reasons John Sean's getting targeted is because he told Nolan that I'm sketchy, I don't like that, I'm scared of that, I want him out of the game. And that's really the most we have from Alec, where it's like, look, there's people saying names to John Sean, but look, I have my core of Megan and Nolan, maybe Patrick, and I've just decided John Sean out of principle because he has said things about me that I am not good with. That's really all we get from Alec. Not much else strategic insight-wise, but still a middle-of-the-road 3. I think we do get the least from Crystal this episode, though, out of everyone in this tribe, content-wise. So we also do see Alec talking to John Sean at the start of the episode, where they're like, oh, no, I mean, like, where John Sean's like, oh, I feel bad if we go home because tribal, because he don't even think about it. And we can kind of see where Alec has this look of like, yeah, I don't think he is thinking about it because I don't feel great about him. We do see, though, Crystal here in this episode, where she's like, look, I'm building a relationship very quick. I need to keep building these relationships. And, I want to build one with Nolan, but I feel like we keep getting interrupted, which I think is funny, especially because of how Nolan feels. And so Crystal spends a lot of this episode really just in the background, making sure the vote's John Sean. It's not her. I don't think she's aware that her name's even out there at this point. But, it's just like, yeah, I'm going to vote John Sean. That's about it. Actually, no, she is aware her name's out there right before the vote. But otherwise, it's pretty silent for Crystal. On the radar, moderate, too. Moderate because people like her still, but 2, because people are starting to think of her as an actual boot. Now we get to John Sean. I said previously in the last episode, I do think if this tribe goes to the tribal, John Sean will be a pretty clear target, and I was right with that. I think John Sean got put in a very, very bad spot to start, and there really wasn't much he could do to recover it. But what he did really didn't help either. I think John Sean kind of put himself in a bad spot instantly by kind of talking a bit negatively about others, and the more so the vibe is that when you're talking a lot more negative about someone versus talking positive about someone, that vibe of that conversation, especially with the first impression, is going to be a lot more of a negative impression as a positive, and people tend to lean towards the positives. And so I think first impressions wise, John Sean got off on the wrong foot, and that kind of led to him being the target here. I think most of this episode, he is middle of the road because he is involved, because it is his boot. And he's still kind of seen as negative because they're like, oh, I don't trust John Sean. I don't feel like I can trust John Sean. I feel like we need to vote him out. And I think John Sean very much plays less of a role in his own boot this time than he did in the first episode. But it does suck to see him go here, because I do think John Sean wanted to play hard and wanted to play well. I think he got dealt a very raw hand here. I think he got probably the worst tribe makeup he could have, with Alec, Megan, and Nolan knowing each other, and Crystal and Patrick somewhat knowing each other, to where he was kind of left out. And that sucks for John Sean. I think given a second chance, John Sean would play a lot better than he did this time, because I think he has the strategic chops and the chops to play the game well. I just think he got put in a situation where in playing the game, it kind of screws him, which sucks. It sucks that he got put in that spot, but that's what happens when you play Survivor. There isn't really much else to it. And so, yeah. But I will say, he does have a good recovery, to the point where there's a point where I'm like, I don't know if John Sean's actually the boot here. I start thinking it might be Crystal because of the work of Megan and Nolan. Oh boy. Let's get started talking about Megan. Megan has an incredible episode here. Originally from the first episode, it seemed like Nolan was in a good spot, but Megan had more connections, but I think Nolan was more control. This, I think, solidifies the fact that Megan has the most power on this tribe. This entire lineup kind of revolves around Megan's decision of, I like John Sean likes me. Do I stick with Nolan or Alec, or do I vote, or do I flip it and end up doing something else? And wanting to get John Sean out of me. And it is really Megan's decision here of whether John Sean goes home or not. And so Megan has a lot of good conversations in this episode. We see a lot of Megan. We see a good conversation with Megan where she also is like talking to Nolan about the idol, and Nolan tells her instantly. He's like, "Oh yeah, I have it," and they lock in this like I'm loyal to each other. Granted, loyal to each other until a certain point where Nolan in a confessional's like, Megan might get slimy at some point. I'll need to eventually cut her, but not yet. I still trust her a lot. And so both of them are in a spot where they're very good. They're very strong. And in the Megan Nolan alliance, and Alec feels very real. And so, yeah. But we see Megan even come back to the episode where, like, at the end, right before the vote, she's like, John, trust me, but I need to go with Nolan and Alec here, and I need to make sure that I'm securely in the best spot. And I think Megan does a great job of that. She gets no content on the side. Character progression positive, or complex personality positive. 5. I think she gets the player of the episode for me. From not even just this tribe, but for all tribes. Like, well done, Megan. Next up, for Nolan. Nolan has a pretty good episode as well. He is also pretty paramount in the vote because, like Megan, he's connected to John Sean, and he has the idol. The idol scene is a pretty big scene in the episode, but truth be told, Nolan also has the underlying argument of the crystal vote, where he starts saying to other people, like to John Sean, he's like, I'm nervous about crystal. Like, what if we did a crystal vote or something? And even in the talk where he was at Alec and Patrick, he's like, what if we throw out Crystal's name as a smoke shield? Which is true in the fact that it could be a smoke shield. I honestly think Nolan said that because he's like, look, if John Sean's not the target, I want it to be Crystal. And he does it in a way where it doesn't really seem like it's his idea. It is his idea. By far, it's his idea. But, you know, it's like, yeah, it's fine. We'll just tell him Crystal's name. No harm, no foul. So Nolan gives himself this option of really, like, do I vote John Sean or Crystal? And I think that's very telling for his game, which is why I think he gets more of, like, a complex personality, because we see Nolan developing in his game to the point where he is setting up targets already down the line. And I think with this setup as well, I think Crystal does end up being the most in danger now if they lose again. Because first off, Nap, Nolan, Alec, Megan, or not Nap, Man. Oh my god, the alliance is Man of Megan, Alec, and Nolan are firmly in control now after this episode, if that's where it sticks. But Megan could flip. I don't know who's going home next for this tribe. My gut would say Crystal, but still. And even still, Nolan has a good episode. He wants to take the first shot, but he knows he can chill and relax, which is why he gets a CP4 here. Now for Patrick. Patrick ends up pretty under the radar this episode, all things considered, but that's because mainly Megan, Nolan, and Alec are like the decision makers in this episode, which allows Patrick to kind of fly a little bit under. But everyone's still talking about how much they like Patrick, and Patrick is still involved in a lot of conversations where all this stuff. And we see a conversation even where John Sean's like quizzing Patrick on who he likes and needs numbers. And, you know, Patrick's like, well, look, we need 2 votes for any other vote in this game. And we'll have some communication stuff. Really doesn't pan out to anything. But, yeah. Patrick just feels close to everyone. Patrick feels in a good spot, and he's seen nicely by his tribe, and that's what's good, which is why he gives him an UTR P4. Overall, though, this tribe's narrative really was Megan and Nolan centric for this episode, which makes them the main characters here. Alec and John Sean being supportive, Chris and Josh are kind of lame, though. So, let's get to some relationships. Kuru has another relationship app. This one's a little bit more modified. The only real changes is that Brandon's like, hey, I like Andrew more. And Nikki's like, I like Bar. So it kind of solidifies for me what I already understood, which is that I do think Andrew and Bar are in the best social positions on this tribe where everyone's willing to work with them. I think quite literally the only person that hasn't said anything about... Actually, I gotta put the arrow back from Bar to Andrew. I think Andrew has everyone wanting to work with him. Brandon just hasn't mentioned Bar's name, which I think there is a little bit of a disconnect there. But yeah, not much is happening here. I do think Brandon is still screwed, but I think Nikki is the second player out. But yeah. As for Une, this map has changed a lot. First off, Corndog is very well connected. I need to add a line for Trinity to Rachel here as well, though. Because there is a line from Trinity to Rachel where she's like, I feel good with Corndog, I feel good with Rachel. Corndog and Rachel are securely in the center of this tribe. And to the point where I think Corndog is in the best position on this tribe by far. But I think both players are in really good spots. Sid is not in a good spot. Sid is looking to get in with Corndog and Rachel, but truth be told, he is in a bad spot. I think Dietz likes Sid a lot, though. And I think if Sid tries to get in with Dietz again as well, then he'll be good. But I think if Sid throws out Dietz's name as a vote, I think he could be in a bad spot. A worse spot than he already is, though. But yeah, still GG, or no, final 2 Neil. Then finally, for Hawaii. Hawaii is a lot more complicated. Originally, I wasn't going to include these because they're not really named alliances, but they are significant, and they were determiners in this vote. Megan is still connected well with Crystal and Patrick. Crystal and Patrick have kind of almost formed this duo, from what it seems like, whereas Patrick and Nolan has also done that. Whereas Megan, Nolan, and Alec are really solidified as a trio. And John Sean's on the out of it. And John Sean, being the only person really without an alliance, is the boot here. And so, yeah. Now, let's get to some contender ranks. Now, these values are subject to change between episodes. For this, though, none of these really change because my feelings are kind of the same. First off, we're going to go in danger. Now, Brandon's still here. I do still think he's in danger. I think this episode, for me, solidifies more of Sid being very in danger if this tribe is in trouble again. And the way I see Sid surviving is not Sid doing something. The way I can see Sid surviving is if someone else wants to make a move. If no one else in that 4 is really like comfortable making a move, I think Sid is easily the boot. Which sucks, because I think Sid just got dealt a bad hand. If we're looking in the unsure of future tier, this has changed a little bit. First off, Trinity's moved up for me in this tier a bit more, because I am still unsure of her future. And right now, it seems like Trinity is like a third and a third person alliance for like Corndog and Rachel. Whereas I worry now that Trinity might get dragged along by them as kind of like a third placer at Final Tribal, which I don't think is true. I think Trinity has a lot of strategic chops for a game that she really hasn't exposed, but that's where I'm seeing it right now. As for Crystal, Crystal's in danger. I am unsure of her future. If her tribe is a tribal again, I do think she will be a target for the vote, and I do worry for her. And as for Nikki, I just haven't heard anything from Nikki of really note other than hey, we should start playing the game. More so, I'm worried about us not playing the game. I just haven't heard much from Nikki, and that's why I'm still kind of like unsure of where she's going to go. I do think all 3 of these players can very much turn it up and turn it around and play very strong. So, yeah. We're looking at middle of the pack players. We have Patrick, Sadie, and Alec. All 3 of these have a little bit different stuff. Sadie, I'm like a bit confident in, like, okay, she's quiet, she's playing well. I don't know how to feel about her really too much, but she's solid. Patrick, for the same thing, he's playing very well. He's very well liked. He is not, in my opinion, the target if it comes down to his tribe in a trial game. And then Alec, I feel like Alec is in a weird situation where he is the third fiddle, or the third strategic fiddle to Megan and Nolan, to where, at least from the show, we can see Alec is that third place between the 3 of them. And so, I'm not sure how to feel about his longevity. I do think he's solidly in the game, though. If we look for close and needing a bit more, this now has 4 people like last time, except it's top 8 now. First off, Andrew, he gets the idol. That's awesome from him. I need to see him do a little bit more. I need to see him go to Tribal. Truth be told, I need to see him go to Tribal and see how he reacts to playing a strategic game. If he's well, he very much easily could go to the winner contention. If he plays it poorly, he could very much go down the other way. I don't know how he's going to play, and that's why he's here. For Rachel being here, I think this is more of a product of Corndog kind of taking that main character status a little bit more than Rachel. And I think Rachel does have winner potential in her game. It's just that she had a very quiet episode. We haven't really seen much, but she does give off a very strong strategic vibe. The reason I have Dietz here as well, though, is I think Dietz has a similar, like, very strong strategic vibe to her and a very strong strategic mind, but she isn't in control of her tribe. I do think she could be in danger as a surprise vote if they go to Tribal, which is putting me a little bit more hesitant in her. And then finally, Cynthia. Look, I said last episode, I don't know how this tribe's going to go. I have a weird feeling about Cynthia that she's going to be very strong, and I can't explain it other than that. That's all I can say for her. She does give a very nice confessional where she's like, Zach is gone, I need to play hard. And that sucks. But yeah. Now for the winter contenders. First up, we're going to start with Corn Dog. Corn Dog is, in my opinion, probably the biggest contender from his tribe here, just based on the fact that he's the idol now, and is in the best social spot. He's in a very strong spot, and if his tribe can stick together, I can see him winning in the end. I can see him sitting at the end and taking the vote. Next up, we have Bar. Bar, my biggest worry for Bar going in from last episode is I figured Bar might play too hard too fast or might be starting to put a negative vibe out there. But truth be told, I think he's kind of quelled it a little bit by recognizing, like, look, I need to play slower. I need to vibe a bit more and just let it all happen. And, you know, I think that's good for Bar's game. It still keeps him in 3 because there's been some shifts around, but he's still solidly in the game for me. Next up, we've got Nolan. Nolan, who I think still has a great chance. It has gone down a bit since the first episode because I feel like the power dynamic of that tribe is Megan and Nolan are in power. And something I'll say with Megan as well is I could see Megan and Nolan being a very strong power duo this entire season. And the storyline runs through the two of them. So much so that we get to the end and they're both seeing each other at Final Tribal. Very strong winner contenders. And one of them wins, one of them doesn't. I think right now, my lean more Megan wins over Nolan, but I could see it going either way. But from what I'm seeing, they are in the strategic driver's seat. And then Megan being in first place, she has a phenomenal episode. She's in a phenomenal spot. I think she can ride it out, and I think she is in the best spot of the game at this point. So, looking at the chart, this is where we're at. I don't know what's coming up next. We've got a lot of episodes to figure it out. But let me know what you guys think. You know, what do you guys think about the season so far? Are you enjoying it? I hope if you guys heard some negative things about you, you'll take it to heart. This is purely character analysis. I'm enjoying everyone watching the season, and I'm hoping to see how the rest of the season goes. So, until the next episode comes out, I've been Sam. I'll see y'all next time.